Welcome everybody to another edition of Heel Yaz. Are you afraid of the mark? I'm Josh Ruckstall, and today we have a legend here, a maritime legend, Cuban Assassin. You are the Cuban Assassin. Do you go by the Cuban Assassin or Cuban Assassin's son, or do you just live
I,
on through the gimmick?
well, I am the son of the original Cuban assassin. Of course, people can see that we do look identical in a lot of ways, so people easily confuse us. But I use the name the Cuban assassin. I also use Cuban assassin number two, Cuban commando, and also went as Cuban assassin Richie Acevedo underneath my real
So you were in the Maritimes, not this past summer, the summer before, and your father was a staple of the Atlantic Grand Prix Maritime tours that happened in the summer. What is that? What is that? What kind of weight does that carry, knowing that your father was such a big influence in the maritime scene?
name. In the beginning, it was really difficult because I didn't want to fasten myself after my father. When I started off in wrestling, I wanted to try to portray myself kind of like Mitch with Gorgeous George and Ric Flair, and I wanted to call myself the Ace, Richie Acevedo. But where I looked so much like Dad, they wanted me to do the Cuban gimmick. And what I did is I remember when I started wrestling in 1989, and I've actually done tours from 1989, 1999, 2005, 2006, 2008, and 2014 for Atlantic Grand Prix Wrestling there in the Maritimes. And I started in 1989. I was under Damascus the Super Bee. I was one of the Super Bees then. And then when I left on my own, and promoters wanted me to do the Cuban gimmick. And I didn't want to do it, but my dad and Jerry Moore would go on a thing called the Cuban Commandos during that time. So I figure I will call myself the Cuban Commando. So whenever they talk about the Cuban Assassin, they were talking about the father, and they talk about the Cuban Commando, they're talking about the son. And then in 1999, I got to go back to Atlantic Grand Prix Wrestling, team up with my dad, and reform the Cuban Assassins, and I became Cuban Assassin number two. Then my dad retired like in 1993, and I just became the Cuban Assassin, even though Fidel Sierra, which got permission to use the name from my dad because they were toured together from Stampede Wrestling in Portland, Oregon, over there for Don Owens and for the Hearts. And he asked Dad if he can use that name. And my dad said, yeah, sure. You can be the Cuban of the United States, and I'll be the Cuban of Canada. Because no one didn't know, neither did I, but I was going to be coming to wrestling just a little 2 years later. I think that was around 1987, 1988. And I started my career in 1989. So it just, you just don't know, but we're all the Cuban Assassins. My dad, Fidel, and myself.
So how big is it, the maritime scene? Like you do tours multiple places. How much of a fan base? How great of a fan base is this Atlantic Grand Prix fan base?
I think Atlantic Grand Prix Wrestling, along with Smoky Mountain Wrestling, are the two, and the AWA, the American Wrestling Association, are actually the last two of the territory days. You can throw Memphis Wrestling in there as well. But I think they're one of the last few of the actual territories. And Emile Dupree, the promoter and owner of Atlantic Grand Prix Wrestling, never sold his territory to Vince McMahon. Never sold it. Even though Renee went and wrestled for Vince, but he never sold the territory. So it's one of those territories that didn't sell out to Vince. But the fan base has always been, no matter if it was my dad there or me and my dad together or if it was me by myself, a lot of people assumed that I was my dad for a while. We had an agreement, if they don't ask, don't tell. But if they ask, don't lie. Let them believe that they're seeing the Cuban Assassin, because there's a lot of similarities between me and my dad. There's a lot of things I incorporate to the character more than what my dad did, but my dad's the one who based the character upon the time period that he started wrestling. It was still in the news of the Cuban Missile Crisis after John F. Kennedy and all that. So, my dad was more the serious tone of the actual wrestler, and I was kind of like at the ending of the territories, began the indies to what's now what they call sports entertainment. So I just became more of a character, but did a lot of things and emulated a lot of my dad, which also eliminated some things of Leo Burke and Ron Smart, because they were my mentors as well as my dad being my trainer, but they were my mentors too.
What I love about Emil's territory is he's very big in the old school way of doing things, and nowadays kayfabe isn't as appreciated as Emil and Renee take kayfabe. Could you go a little bit
Well,
more into detail about that?
yeah, they treat it as old school, and I believe in kayfabe if it's done properly. To me, kayfabe isn't trying to treat the fans like they're stupid or nothing like that. Kayfabe was meant to keep the boys in line, to keep them in check, because if you're going to put money on a main event match, say Leo Burke and Ron Starr, and they're supposed to be in the heat of storyline feud, the last thing you want to do is see them being buddies at the bar or at the movies, or their wives hanging together or anything like that, because you wouldn't really spend your money on something like that. And even in pro boxing to this very day, even though in the main eventers, guys, they're good friends, but they got a job to do and they're going to fight, and they don't associate with each other when they're training to do all that. So it's the same in wrestling. Kayfabe done right, it works, but it's not there for the fans to treat them like they're idiots or stupid or nothing like that. It's there to keep the boys in line, to keep professionalism for the fans, to respect the fans because they want to believe. I mean, I don't want to go see a magic show if I know the trick. It's just not a magic show. And wrestling, you go to a wrestling show, it's not going to be a wrestling show if everybody's all buddies. I mean, in kayfabe, I believe in kayfabe. I honestly do. And I'm not saying it because I was trained part of the old school way with my dad and Leo Burke and Ron Starr and Emil. I just think it is done right. It works. But today, I mean, there's no point to go lie about it because Vince done broke all those rules a long time ago. And I'm not going to disagree with Vince because WWE is successful for a reason. And times change. You got to change with the times and technology. I may not like it like some of the old timers and before me, the legends and before them. But keep in mind, even though the wrestling that my dad was doing was different from what Gorgeous George and Nature Boy Buddy Rogers was doing. And I know this to be a fact. Buddy Rogers, even though he was working for Vince in the 80s, right in the heyday of Hulk Hogan, he didn't agree with the chair shots because they didn't have to use chair shots. And he also saw when they brought in the blood and the violence, It's just everything changes in time, and every 10 years wrestling changes, and that's just the way it is. It was different from Nature Boy Buddy Rogers' day to Strangle Lewis. Totally different type of thing. It was more mixed of real and entertainment. And then before him, it was Frank Gotch and George Hackenschmidt. It was all legitimate. Then the only show that you saw wrestling that we do today was on the P.T. Barnum side shows and the carnies. And that was it. That's how wrestling goes. If you follow the history of wrestling, it's just time and technology changes. And either you're going to change with the time or you're going to get left behind. And wrestling was one of those things that just can change and everything. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying WWE is wrestling. It's not. To me, it's a variety TV show. But all the people that are there had to start here. And they had to start with wrestling old school way, and had to start wrestling indies, or some of them may have, well, not now, but some before had worked in territories, but it became entertainment. And that's what it turned into. And then it is the word. It's been entertainment since the 1920s. And, but we kept it at a respectable level, trying to show professionalism. That's what kayfabe is. It's actually just showing professionalism to the fans, because I wouldn't want to spend my money on a big fight, and I know these guys are going to be good buddies and big friends. I want to see them fight. I mean, that's what made Ronda Rousey such a hot commodity last year, is because she wasn't friends with anybody she fought, Yeah. And I hate to say that I think the Dana there at UFC kind of set her up, moving her match up while she's between model shoots and making movies, TV commercials, and doing all the talk shows. And she's doing what's called micro training. You can't fight doing micro training. You have to devote yourself and train to fight what she does. And but that's what made her hot, because she wasn't friends. Everybody knew that she didn't like none of the girls, and she was a fighter. And I still believe that she'll get the belt back. Even Muhammad Ali lost and got the belt back, and he's the greatest of all time. So I believe she's the second greatest of all time. But wrestling, kayfabe, it's all about respect and professionalism. But I believe it, and I think it should still be there. Done properly, it works.
what I like about your father's character and your character is it's such a natural heat that you guys are able to get. Like, and it's hard to come across that type of heat that you guys draw nowadays.
Yeah, here in the States, it's always USA versus the world, and that comes easy. Uh, in Canada, then I have to work a little bit harder because Canadians are actually pretty good friends, relations with Cuba. So it's not like they're bitter enemies, and having words. But as a character, if you get your character across and you let people see that how Dad and myself, how we both did it, was we used to so-called the international illegal foreign object, where we were able to play hide and seek with the referee. He never saw, but everybody else did. And in actuality, instead of us being the heels, it turned the referee actually into the heel because he just couldn't catch the foreign object. And that's what got us over with not just Puerto Rico, but other countries. I mean, I went to Cleveland, Ohio to do a show, and I was supposed to be a heel, me and Colonel Payne. We went out there, but the Spanish community, and they cheered me because I was the minority guy. And part of their group, I was the Spanish guy. I wasn't the white, the black. I was the Spanish guy, so they're going to cheer me. And that happens a lot with Mexicans and everything else because I'm the one out of that whole roster that's one of them. So they're going to cheer naturally. And then I had to find ways to get myself over by doing that. So I had to find other things, like I would refuse to speak Spanish because the Mexicans aren't real Spanish. They're the rejects of Spain, rejects of Cuba, and I had to make those comments in Puerto Rico and said that they're the other little cockroaches of the world because, Cubans are the real Spanish people. And I got a lot of heat in those places because I would not speak Spanish to them. Not that I can't, it's just that I didn't think it would work well when they're favoring me. And but it really got heat that way. Plus the gimmick, using a foreign object works, and done right, it works. And my dad and myself have proven that many, many times. I still do it to this very day. So that's old school heat, and something I wish Vince would bring back, because to me the best heel champion of all is the one that has to cheat every single time to hold on to the belt or get himself DQ'd to get away from it. He don't have to rely upon big things. It's the small things that counts. And I just think that if he went to a little bit older school stuff, incorporating, not to go back, just to bring some of it. Because, I mean, look at Cesaro. He brought a move that had been seen since the 1950s.
Yeah.
And however that was. And now that's incorporated into the video game, so it made him a star. So, yeah. I mean, if they just go to some little things like that and incorporate those, I think it'd be great. And it's sad about Daniel Bryan, by the way, had to do such a young age and early retire because of the concussion. But he and CM Punk are probably I wouldn't even include Dolph Ziggler, the last resemblance of what actual wrestlers are. Yeah. Even though they do their high spots, but they also tell a story in an old school manner in a match. And that's probably because who they were trained by. Even though CM Punk was backyarded, but he did go get trained. And he did learn. He wanted to learn all the old school. He emulated a lot of Macho Man into his into what he done. So that just to show you, even he learned from old school.
He did. I was listening to an interview he did, and that's why he pointed up when he'd go to the top rope. It was an homage of Macho. But another guy to add to that list, I believe, is Seth Rollins, who is just a natural storyteller with his work.
Yeah, Seth Rollins can work very well. A lot of them people want to compare him to Shawn Michaels. Dean Ambrose is the new Roddy Piper today. Roman Reigns, they're kind of comparing to his cousin, The Rock. Which, by the way, my dad wrestled Roman Reigns' dad, Sika, which is on YouTube from Lou Thesz's territory. It's on YouTube. People can check it out. Cuban Assassin versus Islander Sika. And they had gentleman Saul Wangroff in his corner, which is a legendary guy himself from our profession. And but yeah, I kind of feel bad in a lot of ways for Roman, because I think that Vince was trying to push him so much, and because the problem I see is that if Vince would let like Triple H and Paul Heyman do the storytelling, he would be a lot better and more successful. He's just too predictable. I just think his big problem is, And not that his formula won't work, because he's proven it before. It's just it'll take time to get people to bleed over to favor Roman Reigns right now, because he don't really talk well, so he needs a mouthpiece. If it was me, I would just have him, turn heel on Dean Ambrose, push Dean Ambrose, turn heel, and have Paul Heyman as his mouthpiece. For everybody, make him think he's going to be with Vince, and he's actually with Paul Heyman, and team him up with Brock Lesnar as a tag team, put the tag belts on them, and make those belts mean more, because everybody had to work for it with two tough guys like that. I think that would do better for business for him, because that would emulate a lot of The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin as a tag team, or Mick Foley and Austin, and I love those kind of combinations. When you got two people who really like each other, that works well. As a matter of fact, perfect example, Daniel Bryan and Kane.
Yes. And something I don't know how much stock is able to be taken in the dirt sheets, but we just saw in the Royal Rumble where Roman was booed incessantly. He was supposed to be the final with Triple H, and Dean Ambrose took the final.
Yeah, it got changed last minute, and that's solely because of people and the social media, and they need to understand the Vince and everybody's watching. Vince made the last decision call. Yeah, he did that for a reason. He wanted to see the reaction. He saw the reaction. He understands just because he looks in the mirror and he sees a nice steroid jacked up guy, old man. That everybody wants to see that. And they had a problem with people favoring CM Punk and Daniel Bryan, and that's because people got tired of having steak ran down their throats. And that's from where Vince pushed John Cena so hard. Not that John Cena's bad. He's great. And I think John Cena's one of the greatest of all time, personally. His strong values won't go off the diverges to turn heel just because that they feel it'll make better. I think John Cena is a great example of a true babyface. You still got a lot of mixed fans there that likes a nice, mean, good guy, and that's what Dean Ambrose is. And if they push Dean Ambrose, that'd probably be what's best for, as they use best for business for them, until Seth Rollins comes back, and they can say Roman Reigns. They can still put all three of those guys in the play, because they don't have CM Punk no more. They don't have Daniel Bryan no more. I would love to see him push Damien Sandow, because I think he's a phenomenal worker. He and Cesaro, Dolph Ziggler, they're all phenomenal workers. Although Dolph had his push, but he can still be pushed. Exactly. I just think that and with AJ Styles, my gosh. Combinations are endless with AJ. AJ is phenomenal as his name is. They can have him have any feud of anybody. Chris Jericho, I love the thing with a guy with Chris Jericho, but I would have done it with Dolph Ziggler, personally. I think Dolph and AJ would have been able to take it an extra mile longer. Nothing against Chris. I just think that Chris is getting a bad rap all over the Twitter and social media, where they're thinking that if he beats AJ, he's burying a young talent. If he lays down, he's help pushing. People need to get that out of their mind.
It's a work.
They need to stop being critics and start being fans. I mean, when I watch wrestling, I watch it as a fan. I don't try to watch it as a critic, because these guys are going out doing the best job they can do, and they're there to entertain you. I don't see anybody booing Arnold Schwarzenegger coming back being the Terminator. I don't see them booing Mark Hamill coming back as Luke Skywalker. So, I mean, I just think they really need to sit down and treat it like a movie. You're going there to be entertained. You're going there and watch some phenomenal athletes that's going to give you a good show. And I just wish that people would just stop being critics. I mean, heck, anybody can be a critic, but can you really watch it as a fan? I just think people need to go back, watch it as a fan, and who cares what Vince push? You just cheer whoever you want to cheer for. You got the money. You're the one buying the ticket. You have the right to cheer and boo whoever you want. Doesn't matter who's on top, and that's what Macho Man and Ricky Steamboat proved at WrestleMania 3. And that's an example right there that they should go by.
I agree with everything you're saying, and another guy that is just so underappreciated, it seems like, or he had his push and they just kind of pulled it back, is Kevin Owens.
Kevin Owens is going to get a push. I see that coming down the road, and he is good. And I love the fact, and I don't like a lot of people, I don't like people using that term indie wrestlers because there is no other wrestling other than indie. Either you're international or you're indie or you're WWE. And if you're ROH and TNA, you're still considered indie. You're not considered WWE. They just got higher platforms. Lucha Underground is gaining ground too for it. I'm happy to see these companies grow, especially at Ring of Honor and Lucha Underground.
Yes.
TNA, I have nothing against at all. I just think they are too much of a cheaper carbon copy of what WWE is doing. I think they need to go back to the older format that they did before and do what Jeff Jarrett and his dad had in mind for TNA instead of trying to be a carbon copy, because everybody saw what happened when WCW was doing it. It failed. And you just can't do that. You can't be like WWE. You got to be something different. That's why Ring of Honor is growing, and that's why Lucha Underground is growing really fast. And that's why people was watching Japan wrestling too. They're watching Japanese All Pro Japan too in some areas here. And people watch Mexican wrestling. That's growing because it's different. It's not WWE and it's not TNA, you know. And I'm glad to see these groups going on. And I also like seeing, you know, what happens in the Maritimes, because to me and my dad, the Maritimes is our second home. That's why I always go and do the tours there. Although I'm getting older, you know, a lot of people don't realize that. You know, I appreciate a lot of people with respect and everything, but, you know, I've been wrestling myself for 27 years, and now I'm transcending from sports entertainment, or I like to call pro wrestling, and to doing small parts in films and television, and I want to go in that direction now, and that's, you know, I'm going to be 46 years old, you know. Undertaker's only a few years older than me, so I mean, you can't go forever. And I don't want to be, no disrespect to Flair, you know, no disrespect to Hogan. They are the guys that made this company great, and but I don't want to be those guys up there, you know, trying to live that one last moment of glory. I love it though that they got Flair with Charlotte. I really love it, and I love the divas that they got coming out because they're saving female wrestling.
Yes.
And I really like their matches. Shaw Banks. I like, you know, Becky Lynch, Paige. I think they're saving the women's. Not that the women before them never done any good. It's just somewhere down the line, the office just wasn't doing anything with them. And now they are doing stuff with them and letting the girls do what they can do. And just so you know, I think the TNA knockouts are great female wrestlers because they let them do what they've been doing. And but now they're letting the divas do it in WWE. Now, personally, I don't like using the word divas, superstar, knockouts. I like using the word worker or wrestler. To me, you're either a worker or you're a wrestler, you know. And if you use that superstar, diva, knockouts, that kind of gets the big hit going. And everybody should be on the same plate, no matter if you're the top card, middle card, the opener, or if you just happen to be that new opener, like the band open up the band before the big band comes out, but they do the pre-show. You should take it in stride. You're on the card. You're on the show. It's all together. You know, I mean, heck, every WrestleMania DVD come out, you see every DVD come out, you see the pre-show matches on there. So I mean, and so, I mean, they should take honor and pride in it. I mean, I would. I mean, you go out there, you work hard. You don't worry about. To me, you don't worry about trying to be the top guy. You just try to worry about giving a good performance to get the fans more than their money's worth. Because they come down, they just don't come to see one person, they come to see everybody. And that's how wrestling works. It's a circus. You don't just come to see the clowns. You come to see the tightrope walker. You come to see the elephants, everything. You just don't come to see one. You come to see the whole show. And that's what wrestling is. It's a whole show, a variety show of today, you know. But I think people just should stop being critics and just be fans and just enjoy it for what it is. It's entertainment.
And to touch on the female wrestling that you were talking about, and that's what I feel like Lucha Underground is on point with, is they have the intergender triples tag team. They've got the Sexy Star versus the Pentagon Juniors. Like, there's no division in that company.
Yeah, and they got new girls coming in too. You know, like that Cobra girl coming in, which I don't want to give her identity away. I mean, I know who she is. And I wish her all the best because she deserves it. She's come a long way in just a short period of time. Just like I believe the future of female wrestling from the Maritimes is going to be Madison Miles. And that's because she started off as a fan. We all start off as fans, and she started off as a fan. She watched me and my dad. She's watched many wrestlers growing up, and I think she's going to go places. I think she's going to be one of those future of maritime wrestling and take it to the next level. I will say that I think she will be in WWE. I just don't see her stopping. She's going to go. You'll see her go to Ring of Honor. You'll see her go to Lucha Underground. You'll see her in WWE. You'll see her all this years down the road.
Well, the future is very bright for Madison. And what I like about her work ethic is above none. She's the first one there setting up the ring. She's the one announcing if she has to. She's gonna do anything she can to get on a card just to gain
Well,
experience.
the best worker, the best wrestler is the one who works for everything on the show. One of my friends, Bobby Fulton of the Fantastics, even said it. If they needed a ring announcer, he was a ring announcer. If they needed a commentator, he was a commentator. If they needed a referee, he was a referee. If they needed a ring guy, he was a ring guy. If he was the gopher guy, he was the gopher guy, just so he could be part of the show. And that's the old school mentality. You pay your dues because you love this business. We all do. And no exception for anyone. Madison is doing a great job, and I see her as being one of the possible futures, just like when I met Rene Dupree when he was 15 years old. I knew he was going to be in WWE. When I met Harry Smith the following year when he was 15 years old, I knew he was going to make it. And T.J. Wilson was there too, Tyson Kidd. I knew he was going to make it. When I went to Puerto Rico and I met Carlito, and he was called Carly down there, and Eddie, just Primo, or one of the Los Matadores, if you want to go by. I knew they both were going to make it too. They all had what they want, and they all had the same values. And I met CM Punk and Daniel Bryan on an IWA show years ago when they were younger, when they were kids, and I knew they were going to make it because they were hungry enough, and they had CM Punk had the attitude, but he was right in what he said. He had his plan, his vision. He said himself he was going to be Vince McMahon's top guy within 10 years. And within that time frame, probably less than that, he was. And then again, I don't know if it's Vince, Triple H, or whoever, but, WWE dropped the ball on losing a good talent. When you got someone like CM Punk, you should be willing to do business and not lose the talent that can really take, your fan base to another place. And they should really stick and stand behind him and work with him. But his health was at risk with the doctor there, and his other things come up, and I got a lot of respect for both CM Punk, Daniel Bryan, all those guys, I had nothing but respect for them. There's guys from where I live in West Virginia that made it there too. One of them was Mark Canterbury. You might know him better as Henry O. Godwin, one of the Godwins. And before that, he was Shanghai Pierce in WCW.
Yep.
And then there was another guy, Jamie Noble, who was in WCW, the Young Dragons, and went on to WWE. And then you got Heath Slater that's there. And now another one that I helped mentor. I didn't train him. He was trained by the Batten twins, Bart Brad's sensational Batten twins. And I helped mentor him and take him around, which is Jason the Gift Kincaid. And now he's in Ring of Honor. Now he's doing stuff Ring of Honor. He's just going on, and he's doing a lot of phenomenal things. I think he's just like AJ and just like Dolph Ziggler. And I believe he's going to be there in WWE here in the next few years too. I just don't see him not taking it. He's just that good.
So, just going to close up our little interview here with a few just kind of like lightning round questions. If you could have it the way it is now or go back to territories, which would you prefer?
Well, I would go back to the territories because there would be more jobs for the boys. Of course, it would be a different picture out there. But what they got going today isn't bad. It's just that everybody's got to work harder to get to the top. But there's nothing wrong with competition, and the territories always competed against each other. All Vince did was take it up to the chain of the McDonald's, and the same as Walmart and so forth. He just made his business bigger. But I would prefer the territory days.
Is there a certain territory you would have liked to have worked for, or that you would like to go back to working for?
Oh, yeah. I would have loved to have a chance to run with Vern Gagne in the AWA. I would have loved to work with the Crockett's in the Mid-Atlantic area, and the Von Erichs over in World Class in the Texas area. I would have loved to, done a lot of those areas for those territories, but it would have been those are the three main ones I would have worked for. I would have worked for Vince too, and he bought from his dad WWF, then the World Wrestling Federation, and but it was moving up. It was no longer that territory base, but I would have worked for him too if I'd had the opportunity to do. So it was I would have worked all of those. That was my main thing, was trying to get to something like territory, but the territories were gone when I started my career. They were already finishing up. So AWA faltered a few years later.
Is there anyone you would have liked to have worked with that became a big sensation in the WWE/F that you think could have had a great story with your Cuban Assassin character as well as?
Well, yeah, I would have loved to work Sergeant Slaughter. I would have loved to work Hulk Hogan, the older names. I think I would have done well with Daniel Bryan if I had an opportunity to be up there. But of course, being older, it wouldn't be a long match. But I would have liked to work Hogan definitely, because it would have been good for the gimmick, the character, and the whole USA thing. Because when I worked Hacksaw Jim Duggan on the Indies, and all those guys loved me, and everything for that, because it worked well. And that's the biggest star I ever really wrestled was Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Other than Kurgan, John Kurgan, Robert Maillet, he became a Hollywood movie star now. And
Maritimer as well.
Oh, great Maritimer, Rene Dupree, I love working him. His brother Jeff Dupree, I love working him. Really solid guys. Working the Dupree brothers was kind of like being in the ring with the Von Erichs, I think, if you could compare it, because they worked solid and snug, and it was more believable matches I had with them than I had with most, because you pretty much was fighting for your life with those two. But they're a lot of fun, and I enjoyed them. But yeah, I definitely would like to have done something with Hulk Hogan or Sergeant Slaughter. Would have been something really good for the character during my early days starting off.
Now, just my final question here. Is there anything that you would like to see happen in the wrestling industry in the next, let's say, 5 years? You'd like to see change within the sports entertainment field, as for example, the way Lucha Underground's taking it with that more comic book, instead of backstage promos, it's more vignettes. That's an example.
Well, Lucha Underground's good, but they make it like a TV series, and I kind of like it, because I understand why they're going that direction, because they can't give what they already got from Mexico, and they can't give what Vince has already got. They got to be different. So they intentionally make theirs look like a TV show, but it's good. And Ring of Honor, I think, is good. But I like to see both Ring of Honor and Lucha Underground get to a national-based status, just like Vince is. Because I believe the best thing that's going to be good for, they say, best for business is competition. And if you got other wrestling promotions after offices that can grow to be that big, and I hope to see Ring of Honor grow that big, and Lucha Underground, I would love to see that, because then you got competition again. And that's what's really going to work for wrestling. It'd be good for the boys. Most importantly, it's going to be good for the fans. That's what I want to see. I also like to see Atlantic Grand Prix Wrestling come back to be more of a summertime territory base like it used to be. That's something I would love to see, because I really like that concept. It was a place people can go in the summer to get away from other places. Like, you could set your bookings up good for different territories and go between them all. And plus you can only do anything but learn working that kind of territory-based style, wrestling every day. That's what I liked about Atlantic Grand Prix. And I wish wrestling was more every day. I wish these smaller indie guys would get out of the mood thinking they're going to make money off one show a month or two shows out a month, and realize you got to treat it like a mom and pop downer. You got to run a show every day and take your losses for whatever day, because at the end of the week's what you're going to gather at the end of the week, and you're going to do business. If you do good storytelling and you promote properly, get good talents, you're not going to lose. I mean, it's just like a mom and pop downer Indies is, and you really need to concentrate on doing wrestling more of an everyday thing, because no one don't have to wait to run on Friday, Saturdays. You can run any day. It don't matter, and You know, if you think Vince stops on any particular day, he runs it as many days as he can. You know, and that's what you need to do. That's what makes wrestling successful. Of course, it takes a toll on one's body. You can only do it for so long. You have to learn how to work things into your character and your match that makes it safe, and which is what Ric Flair did. And and which reason why he lasted so long. So just an example, I'm not trying to say it was the proper way, but he lasted as long as he did because of the fact of the style of wrestling he brought out in his psychology. So.
And just to end it off on a good story, what's the craziest thing? Because you're a heel most places you go. What's the craziest thing a fan's done, like
Well,
during a match or whatever? Just like because
I
I know in the Maritimes here, people get like really up in the face of the heel and like Maritimers, we don't like they don't care. Like they're gonna get if they don't like you, they're gonna get up in your face and they're gonna tell you. So something like is there anything crazy that's happened to you?
oh yeah, when I was in Puerto Rico and I was wrestling Eddie Colon, I was using the foreign object the gimmick on him. There was a guy that ran to the ring and the cops tackled him. And they come back and they wanted to know if I want to press charges against him. I didn't understand what they were talking about. And so he had a big old long knife. He was going to run to the ring and stab me. And I had to spit on me down there and throw cups of urine on you. And, down there it's really crazy. They believe and take it seriously down there in Puerto Rico. The Maritimes kind of remind me a lot of some of Texas wrestling. Because the Maritimers didn't have a problem telling you either. They get in your face and want to fight too. And that's because, they got the good spirits running into them over in the Maritimes, which helps plays with wrestling. Texas, same way. You don't dare insult a Texan, I'll tell you right now. And they'll fight your teeth and nail. And so don't ever call a Texan a dude. I learned that. Don't ever call a Texan a dude.
Well,
but yeah, it's good memories.
well, thank you very much. I appreciate you taking the time to sit and talk with me.
No problem. I appreciate having the time and keep up the good job. Hopefully, everything will come around and maybe I can do another one for you down the road too.
Oh, I would love that. So thank you very much. This has been an episode of Heel Yaz, Are You Afraid of the Mark? Richie Acevedo edition. Thank you.